We survived 300 days in hardcore Minecraft. In our hardcore series, we decided to play with 2 players. This means that if either of us die, the whole series is over. So far, we've survived 100 and 200 days, and we managed to accomplish quite a few things. But for these 300 days, we had 3 main goals. The first was to find and conquer a woodland mansion, the second was to complete some of the game's hardest achievements, and the third was to defeat an ocean monument. Anyway, let's get straight into day 201. On our first day back on the server, we decided to head down into the villager trading hall and say hello to all of our villagers. Then we noticed that our zombie had stolen one of our pumpkins, so we decided to throw some more plants in his face. Next, I ran up to my horse and said hello by giving it a little ride around our base. I was curious to see what Lockdown was doing, but when I went to check, I got attacked by his dogs. They really do hold a grudge. On day 202, we went back to our roots and started farming again. Once we had more crops than we could carry, we decided to do some more trading. Then while we were flexing with our new profit, I got a bit too excited and punched a hole in the floor. The next day, we decided to head into the nether so we could collect some gold for golden apples. The reason we needed golden apples is so that we could do another raid to get more totems, because someone decided to kill me loads and then we lost all of our totems. So we needed to get them back so we wouldn't die. On day 204, we prepared ourselves for the battle against the raid. We crafted up some golden apples and then grabbed some potions from our chest. Now we were ready for war. We set off in the morning with the hopes of finding a pillager outpost. As we soared through the skies, we scanned the vast landscapes for the enemy base. And finally, after a while of searching, there it was. I quickly rushed in with my axe in hand, but I was surrounded by a swarm of pillagers. They brought me down to just 4 hearts, but luckily, one by one, we managed to pick them off. After murdering countless pillagers, I managed to obtain the bad omen effect. We then found the nearest village and the raid commenced. We swiftly took down wave after wave of enemies, but somehow the raid still ended in defeat. So we went to bed in shame. We hoped that we would have better luck the next day, so we once again battled our way through the pillager outpost and headed towards a new village. As I landed, I was almost instantly taken out by our enemies, but luckily I managed to survive. As we quickly chopped down our opponents, the raid was going well. But once again, the game decided it didn't like us very much, so the raiders refused to spawn. We decided that we'd have to make do with the totems we already had. By day 207, we were fed up of raids, so we decided to head home. But because the end portal was much closer to us than our base, we decided to head there instead. But we found out that we hadn't been so clever, as when Lockdown jumped in, he was teleported back to the village that we'd slept in the previous night. So he had to run all the way back to the end portal as we had no more rockets. Then once Lockdown joined me on Spawn Island, we both got in the boat and sailed home. On day 208, we emptied out our inventories into our chests, and then I was once again brutally attacked by one of Lockdown's pets. He really does need to get them under control. Then, because we had no rockets, we spent the rest of the day struggling to get on top of the mob farm with ender pearls. But finally, once we reached the top of the mob farm, we went AFK so we could get some more rockets. Throughout all of day 209, the mob farm was hard at work getting us all of those precious resources. In the morning, it was time to head down to the bottom of our mob farm and see all the goodies that we had collected. And it turns out that the farm worked so well that the chest was overflowing. Once we'd grabbed all of the gunpowder out of our farm, we crafted up some rockets and flew back home. Once we got back, I decided to craft up some books, but I'm not quite sure that's how it's done. Then we used those books to put Unbreaking 3 on our shovels and headed to the back of our base to start flattening out an area. Because our next project would need a lot of stone, we decided to spend all of day 211 mining out a chunk using our Haste 3 beacon. Our idea for the next few days was to see who could build the best base, but when I was laying down the foundations of my base, I realised something on this scale would take far too long. So on day 213, I tore down what I'd built so far and started constructing something a lot more reasonable. Then while I was busy constructing my base, Lockdown got attacked by a party of pillagers. But because he didn't want to get the bad omen effect, he trapped one of them into a stone coffin. Because I was going to need a lot of red nether brick for my base, I decided to spend the whole next day setting up a nether wart farm and smelting down some netherrack. Then on day 215, we decided to take a break from designing our bases, so we got to work on getting a cartography villager. Then, using some empty maps, I made a cool map of our base. The main reason that we needed a cartography villager is so that we could get a woodland explorer map. This would help us find and defeat a woodland mansion so we could complete our first goal. Also later on in that day, I trapped one of Lockdown's dogs in this tiny crate. By day 217, it was time to get prepared for the woodland mansion, so we grabbed an explorer map from the villager and then started brewing up some potions. In the morning, we were ready for an adventure towards the woodland mansion, so with our inventory stacked, we took flight towards the unknown. We spent the rest of day 218 endlessly travelling towards our goal, and finally by day 219 we had found it. We quickly entered and started working our way from room to room, all while slaying the pesky monsters. Even though the halls were vast, we were slowly but surely making our way through them. Once we were on the second floor, I entered a seemingly empty room, but around the corner waiting for me was loads of Vindicators. They managed to put me down to just 5 hearts, but luckily I made it. Once the last room was conquered, we had done it. Our first goal was complete and we only had 2 more to go. On day 220 we created a nether portal on top of the mansion and then used the nether as a quick way home. Once we were back home, I headed down into the villager trading hall and repaired all of my gear. Then later on that night, while myself and Lockdown were having a play fight, I accidentally jumped off the middle tower without my elytra. That was a close one. On day 222 it was time to harvest all of my nether warts and create some more red nether bricks. But once I started constructing the roof on my base, I realised I would need a lot more than I already had. The next day I spent finishing the roof and filling in the windows. Then on day 224 I added some more details. And somehow by day 225 Lockdown managed to start a raid in our base. However, luckily Lockdown managed to fend the waves of enemies off and we actually got quite a few more totems. Finally, after a few more days of hard work, the bases were complete. Once we were finished building, on day 228 we decided to give each other a little tour around our houses. Anyway, the building of these houses was a competition after all, so if you think I won, drop a like on the video, and if you think Lockdown won, put a comment down below. Also, I'm going to set a like goal of 5,000 likes for 400 days, so make sure to smash that like button so you don't miss out. Anyway, on day 229 I began gathering some resources for our next project. And on day 230 we began putting it together. And yes, if you can't already tell, what we were building is an archery range. I thought it would be a fun little thing to do to see who is better with a bow out of me and Lockdown. The next day I decided to spice it up a little bit by adding in some redstone so we could tell how close to the center of the target that we hit. After one more day of working out the kinks, it was time to test who was better with a bow. At this point I was extremely nervous because Lockdown is normally way better at the PvP side of Minecraft. Lockdown went first from the 10 meter mark and managed to score a very respectable 19 points. But then it was my turn and I managed to hit the center of the target every single time. I still don't know how that happened. I went first from 20 meters back and at the start I was crumbling under pressure. But I soon found my rhythm and managed to bag myself 13 points. Then it was Lockdown's turn and I actually managed to beat him by 2 points. Then from the third and final distance, Lockdown got himself 10 points and I managed to get 14. This was a massive surprise as it meant that I won all 3 rounds. I definitely was not expecting that, but I wasn't complaining. The next day we decided it was time to make some progress towards our second goal, which was to complete some of the hardest achievements in the game. The first one we decided to tackle was called Bullseye, and it involves hitting the exact center of a target from 30 blocks away. Surprisingly, I managed to get it pretty quickly, but I can't say the same for Lockdown. By the end of the day, he'd had so many goes that he actually broke his bow. However, by day 235, using some sneaky tactics, he managed to get it. And also that night, I got another achievement called Sniper Duel. For the next 2 achievements we wanted to complete, we would need some tridents. So we decided to spend the next 2 days scouring the oceans for drowns. We did manage to find quite a few, but unfortunately none of them dropped us their tridents. By day 238, we decided to put the idea of getting tridents on hold and decided to go for a bit of an easier achievement and spawn in some iron golems. Then the next day we set our minds on completing some of the crossbow achievements. The first one was easy as we just had to use a crossbow, and then the second one involved killing a pillager with their own weapon. So we set off from our base back towards the pillager outpost. On our way I decided to pick up a beehive so we could get some more achievements. Then once we finally found the outpost we quickly landed and took out a pillager. On day 240 I realised that I had still somehow not picked up lava in a bucket yet. So I quickly ran down to the mine and got that achievement out of the way. Then I spent the rest of the day building a little house for our bees. I spent the majority of the next day finishing off the house, and then because we were running low on rockets, we decided to spend another day AFKing. All of 242 was spent at the top of our mob farm, and in the morning we crafted some more rockets. Then I decided to go and look after the bees, but I accidentally broke their nest and they both stung me. I guess I'm not a very good beekeeper. I then spent the whole rest of the day getting another beehive, but at least I got a new achievement. We started off day 244 by getting the Be Our Guest achievement by collecting some honey from a beehive. Then we noticed this really cute baby bee really liked the windowsill. Also, if you're wondering why we haven't slept in a while, it's because we're trying to get another achievement where you kill 2 phantoms with 1 crossbow bolt. It was an extremely difficult achievement, so our first few tries was a fail. The next day we were finally able to make a honey block, so we placed it down and we both managed to get the sticky situation achievement. Once again that night we tried to get the 2 birds 1 arrow achievement, and finally Lockdown managed to get it. It was quickly becoming day and the phantoms would soon die, but with my last arrow I managed to get it as well. On day 246 we got another achievement by catching a fish in a bucket, and then we made a nice little aquarium for them. The whole next day we spent gathering wool for our next project, and then on day 248 I started its construction. The next 2 days were spent finishing off the new build, and finally by day 251 the build was complete. And yes, it is indeed a plane dropping a like bomb, which is what you guys should do on this video. Also, while you're down there you might as well subscribe because this video took over 50 hours to make. Anyway, that's enough self-promotion for now, let's get back to the video. Because the plane was dropping a like bomb, Lockdown thought it would be a good idea to drop a real bomb on the turtles. I didn't think this was very nice, so I built some graves for the turtles, but when I was trying to put some flowers on their graves, Lockdown came up and burned them. He really is evil. On day 253, I decided it was time to improve the mob farm. Hopefully, if I could improve the rates of the farm, we wouldn't have to be AFK so much. For all of day 254, I was expanding the mob farm. Then on day 255, Lockdown thought it would be a good idea to dive bomb me with a power 5 bow. Let's just say that was not the best use of 2 totems. By the next day, we thought it was time for some more achievements. So we grabbed a saddle and a fungus on a stick and headed into the nether. The achievement we were trying to get was called This Boat Has Legs, and it basically means to ride a strider. Once I had my eyes set on one of the walking cubes, I swooped down and got on its back. I thought while we were in the nether I might as well get another achievement done. So I grabbed myself some gold and chucked it at a piglin to distract it. Then once we were finished in the nether, we decided to bring our new friends back home. Also, I'm not quite sure how their massive heads fit down these tiny corridors. On day 257, I expanded the storage of the mob farm, and then we went AFK for the next 2 days. After our AFK session, we flew down to the bottom of the mob farm, and we were massively surprised by how much my improvements to the mob farm had increased the rates. As in just 3 days of AFKing, we got almost 14 stacks of gunpowder. This meant that we never had to worry about rockets again. On day 261 we decided that we wanted a map room, so we flattened out a little area for it and then we got to work mapping out our base. Mapping our whole area was actually quite difficult, so it took us all of day 262 to get it finished. Then the next day I got to work building the house that the map would go in. On day 264 we finally finished the map room, and then by day 265 we were fed up of being attacked by mobs. So we made it our next goal to get loads of torches and light up our area. Obviously, getting a lot of torches would mean getting a lot of coal. So we emptied our inventories, grabbed a few things, and then headed down into the mine. Throughout the days that we were down in the mine, we managed to get quite a few diamonds, but most importantly, stacks and stacks of coal. Hopefully it would be enough so we could light up our entire island. Once we got back to the surface on day 268, it was definitely apparent that we had enough coal to light up our area. So we crafted a bunch of torches and got to work lighting everything up. Then on day 269, we just chilled around the campfire. By day 270, we decided that it was time to complete our third and final goal, to defeat an ocean monument. So we spent the whole day preparing by brewing up some water breathing potions, trading for an ocean explorer map, and crafting up some TNT. By day 271, we were ready to take on the ocean monument. So with the map in hand, we headed off in the direction that it was leading us. But it turns out we didn't really need the map, as the ocean monument was not far away. We landed in the ocean, and then I decided to place the first TNT so we could break into the monument. However, just as I got inside, I was taken down by the guardians, and I had no more totems left. It was at this point that we realized this was going to be pretty dangerous. Eventually, we managed to take down the first Elder Guardian, then it was just a matter of repeating the same process on the 2 other Elder Guardians. And luckily, we managed to come out of the other side of the battle mostly unscathed. Once the majority of the Guardians were killed, we started looting the monument. First, we stole the gold blocks, and then we snatched all of the sponges. Finally, after coming so close to death, we had completed our 3rd and final goal. Once we'd returned home on day 272, myself and Lockdown both thought it was time to bring something back from 200 days. So we headed out into the fields and started chopping some pumpkins and melons. And yes, that's right, it was the return of the mighty melon and pumpkin pile. The next day, we decided to add even more melons and pumpkins until the pile was overflowing. Then to round off that area, we decided to connect up the paths. While we were working the fields on day 274, we realised that our melon and pumpkin farm was full of holes. So there was only one sane way to combat this, to get ourselves some netherite hose. We collected up some wool and wood, and then headed into the nether. We carefully dug down to Y level 15, and then we started blowing up some beds. Eventually, after spending the whole day mining, we managed to get enough ancient debris so we could both get a hoe. The next morning, we both crafted up our netherite hose, gaining us the achievement of serious dedication. Then we both decided to name our hose, and I named it this, and Lockdown named his hoe. Now we could finally fill in the gaps in our farms. On day 276, we decided to craft up a respawn anchor and then use it in the nether for another achievement. Then we realised if we wanted to do the achievement involving a lodestone, we would have to get more netherite. So we started mining again, and eventually we managed to get that achievement as well. Then the next day, we decided to relax a bit by having a little game of hide and seek. On day 278, we decided that the next achievement we would do would be to eat every food in the game. So I spent the next 3 days travelling around our world and collecting any food I could get my hands on. And at one point I even ended up in the end getting some chorus fruit. By day 281 we had every type of food apart from an enchanted golden apple. So we decided to set off in the search for some. I was scanning over this desert for almost 2 days in the search of desert temples, but suddenly my elytra broke and I plummeted into the ocean. This was not good news as I was thousands of blocks away from our house. So I had to spend the whole remainder of the day rowing back home. The next morning I repaired my elytra and set off once again in the search of an enchanted golden apple. Luckily Lockdown managed to find one for himself, but I still needed one so I could complete the achievement as well. Unfortunately, after spending a whole nother day searching, I didn't manage to find one. Day 284 was the day of the Great Feast, so we grabbed as much food as we could carry and started munching. However, once I ate a pufferfish, I instantly regretted it and I almost died to its poison effect. But finally, by the end of the day, Lockdown managed to complete the achievement and I was just the enchanted golden apple away. The next morning, we decided it was time to get some of the end achievements out of the way. But so that we could spawn the ender dragon back in, we would need some end crystals, and they required gas tears. So we headed into the nether to get some, and here is where I came the closest to death so far. I'm not even gonna deny that I was panicking because that was pretty scary. On day 286 we headed into the end and managed to get the end again achievement by spawning in the ender dragon. Also Lockdown managed to kill it, so he got the free the end achievement as well. Next we headed to the end city to get the achievement of floating 50 blocks from a shulker. And after a few failed attempts, myself and Lockdown both managed to get the achievement. Then we spawned in the Ender Dragon one last time so I could get some Dragon Breath and complete all of the End achievements. The next morning we wanted to do something a bit more laid back, so we started creating a flying course around our base. By the next day the course was complete and it was actually really fun flying around it. But it was quite scary as I didn't have a totem, so any wrong move and I could be dead. On day 290 I collected all of our gunpowder from over at the mob farm, and then we went to check if the firework dispensers were still working from 200 days. Then we spent the next 9 days preparing for our final show by getting some dyes and crafting some rockets. It was now day 300 and all of our efforts in the past 100 days had led up to this one moment. Anyway, enjoy the show. If you guys haven't already checked out Lockdown's channel, the link to it is in the description down below and it has his perspective over there. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching and I'll see you later.